Let's do another example. Let's do the valence bond structure for the H2S molecule. Let's do it both of the ways that I showed you in the last video by showing overlaps between half-filled orbitals on an energy level diagram and by drawing the shapes of the orbitals and showing where the overlaps are. Okay, but I am going to do something a little bit different with the energy level diagram. Instead of using energy level diagrams, I can make this a little bit simpler by using the orbital diagrams that we've already learned how to draw. Do you remember, if I want to draw an orbital diagram for hydrogen, it's got one electron in a 1s orbital, right? So I can draw that. There's two hydrogens in there, so how about if I draw another orbital diagram for that one? Now let's draw the valence shell configuration for the sulfur. And I'll draw that between these two so that I can show the overlaps a little bit more easily. So let's look up the valence shell configuration for sulfur. It's got a neon core, but I don't really care about that. I'm going to just do the valence orbitals. 3s2, 3p4. Can you see that that was, here's the sulfur, 3s2, 3p4 is the valence configuration. So I'm going to draw 3s, and then there's a 3p. And let me see, there's 3s2, and then it's 3p4. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. I doubled it up there. Now I drew these down just so that I'll be able to pair them up later with this. It doesn't matter if I draw these up or down, but if in order to draw a valence bond, I've got to have opposite spins. So let's draw the valence bonds here. I've got an up electron here and a down electron there, so that can be one valence bond. And I've got an up electron here and a down electron there, so that can be another valence bond. So these lines that I've drawn here are the valence bonds. So that's one picture of an H2S molecule in the valence bond theory. All you got to do is draw the atom configurations and then pair up half-filled orbitals and make sure that the spins that you're pairing up are opposite. All right, now let's draw this as a sort of a balloon animal kind of model where I'm drawing the actual overlapping orbitals. So let's draw the sulfur first. And I'm only going to draw the orbitals that are involved in the valence bonds. So I'm going to draw a 3p orbital and a 3p orbital in the sulfur. Here's the sulfur nucleus. And here's a 3p orbital that I'm drawing going up and down like that. Now let me draw another 3p orbital, the second one, and it's going to be at right angles to that. Let me color it in so it looks a little different. Okay, how about we just do it like this? They both look like dumbbells. These are two separate orbitals, though. I have my stripy orbital and my unstripy orbital, so this is a 3p and this is also a 3p. Now, I have to overlap each of those 3p's with a 1s. Now, I'm going to overlap this 1s with this 3p. I cannot go ahead and put the other 1s on this. Why? It's one orbital overlapping with one orbital. The fact that this has two lobes does not mean that there are two places to overlap. You can only overlap on one lobe or the other. So I get a valence bond in there because there's an overlap. Remember, a valence bond is an overlap. And then the other overlap has got to be with the other orbital. I could put the other 1s here, or I could put it here. Doesn't matter. And there'll be a second overlap. So there'll be two valence bonds in here. Now both of these pictures are showing the same structure, the same valence bond structure. Now what can I say about the geometry of the H2S molecule? What is going to be the angle between the valence bonds? So here's the hydrogen, here's the sulfur, and here's the hydrogen. It looks to me like the bond angle will be the same as the angle between p orbitals. And all of the p orbitals are at right angles to each other. So I predict from the valence bond theory (90-degree bond angle). The actual bond angle is 92 degrees. So valence bond theory does a good job of explaining what the bonds in this molecule look like. Everything seems great. How about if I do water? That should be pretty similar, right? I'm going to do the valence bond structure for water like this. I have two hydrogen atoms, and they each have a 1s orbital. And then I'm going to put the oxygen valence shell configuration in here. Oxygen is right above sulfur. It's got a 2s2, 2p4 configuration. So let's put the hydrogen in. It has one electron, can make it spin up. This one has one electron, make it spin up. And the valence shell configuration for this is 2s2, 2p4. And I'll make these spin down so that I can overlap them. So it looks like pretty much the same structure as with the H2S, right? And I could draw the same kind of balloon animal structure for this. I need to overlap a 2p with a 1s and then a different 2p, which is at right angles to the first one, with this 1s. So I could draw structure just very much like this one. These are 2p's, so I can draw them a little bit smaller. Because a 2p orbital will be a little bit smaller than a 3p orbital. And then I can overlap the 1s and the 1s here. And I would expect this to look like my water molecule. I don't see anything wrong with that unless I look a little bit closer. I did a great job agreeing with experiment here. So here the theory is doing really well. How well does this one agree with experiment? Well, let's compare the Lewis structure with this for water. The Lewis structure for water will look like okay, fine, they look kind of the same, but where's the lone pairs? Okay, and if I look at this diagram over here, I can see the lone pairs as electron pairs here. One of the lone pairs looks like it's a 2s, and the other lone pair looks like it's one of the 2p's. All right, so the lone pair is kind of buried in here, one of them, according to this model, and the other one is the other p at right angles to this. All right, but what about the bond angle? Now, if we look at this in the Lewis theory, there are 4 electron groups here, 4 electron clouds. So I will have a tetrahedral electronic geometry. And the bond angle in the Lewis theory for a tetrahedral geometry is going to be 109.5 degrees. And I could do a little bit better than that in the Lewis theory. I'd say, well, you got two lone pairs here. They're going to crush this bond angle, so I would predict the bond angle in the Lewis theory to be a little bit less than 109.5 degrees. And what does the valence bond theory predict it to be? It predicts that since this is a p orbital and this is a p orbital and all p orbitals are at right angles, the predicted bond angle would be 90 degrees. Now what's the true bond angle? It's 104 degrees for water. Which one's closer? Well, the Lewis theory actually does a better job predicting the bond angle, the geometry of water, than the valence bond theory. Now, why is that? It turns out that in this special case where you have got the second valence shell, this 2s orbital and this 2p orbital have got nearly the same energies. And what can happen is these orbitals can mix and we can get a new set of orbitals called hybrid orbitals. When you embed a second period atom inside of a molecule, its s and p orbitals can mix to make hybrid orbitals. And that's what we'll talk about in the next video.